The rain tapped softly against the grand glass windows of the city's most expensive restaurant. Inside, warm golden lights shone over velvet chairs, crystal glasses, and polished silver cutlery. The atmosphere was filled with the soft sound of classical music and low, elegant conversations. At the center of the main dining room sat a large table reserved for the Sterling family. Tonight was their annual family celebration, a night dedicated to wealth, status, and business success. Ethan walked slowly toward the table. He wore a simple dark suit that was clean but clearly inexpensive. His shoes were polished, but they were old. Compared to the tailored designer outfits of his relatives, Ethan looked like a stranger who had walked into the wrong room. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his pounding heart. Ethan was a soft-spoken, hard-working project manager. For years, he worked 16 hours a day at a growing technology company. He did not care about expensive cars or fancy clothes. He cared about doing good work and helping people. But to his family, simple living was a sign of weakness. As Ethan approached the table, his older brother Julian looked up. Julian was wearing a custom-made Italian suit and a heavy gold watch. He held a glass of expensive champagne in his hand. The moment his eyes fell on Ethan, his lips curled into a cold, mocking smirk. "Well, look who finally decided to show up," Julian said loudly. His voice carried across the surrounding tables, attracting the attention of several wealthy guests. "Did you take the bus here, Ethan? You look like you just finished a shift at a cheap diner." The entire table burst into light laughter. Ethan's mother adjusted her diamond necklace and looked away in embarrassment. His father did not even raise his head. He simply continued cutting his steak as if Ethan did not exist. Ethan kept his composure. He pulled out an empty chair at the end of the long table. "Traffic was heavy, Julian." "Good evening, everyone." Before Ethan could sit down, Julian slammed his glass on the table. The sharp sound echoed through the dining hall. "Stop right there. Who said you could sit with us?" Ethan froze, his hand still holding the back of the chair. "Julian, it is a family dinner. Mom invited me." "Mom invited you out of pity," Julian snapped, his eyes flashing with arrogance. "Look around you. Tonight we are hosting some of the most influential investors in the city. My company is about to sign a multi-million-dollar deal with Vance Enterprises. We cannot have someone looking like a beggar sitting at our table. It ruins our image." Ethan looked at his mother, hoping for a single word of defense. But his mother merely cleared her throat. "Ethan, dear, your brother is right. Image is very important tonight. Maybe you should come back another time." Julian pointed a finger toward a small wooden table located near the kitchen doors. "Go sit over there by the kitchen, Ethan. That is where you belong." Ethan did not move toward the kitchen table. He stood beside the main table, his gaze steady and calm. The silence in the restaurant grew heavier as other diners watched the scene unfold. Julian's face darkened when he saw that Ethan was not obeying him. He stood up, towering over the table, and straightened his expensive jacket. "Did you hear me, Ethan? Or has working a pathetic, low-level job made you deaf as well?" "I heard you, Julian," Ethan replied quietly. His voice was smooth, devoid of anger or panic. "I came here because Mother invited me. If my presence bothers you so much, that is your issue, not mine." A collective gasp echoed from the neighboring tables. Julian sneered, stepping closer to Ethan. "You think you have a choice? Let me remind you of reality. You work as a minor project lead. You live in a small apartment. You drive a beat-up car. You are a complete disappointment to this family." Ethan's father finally looked up, his expression cold and dismissive. "Julian is right, Ethan. Stop creating a scene and sit where you are told. You are embarrassing us in front of prospective business partners." At that moment, a well-dressed man in a sharp gray suit approached the table. It was Mr. Harrison, one of the primary investors Julian was trying to impress. Julian immediately changed his expression, putting on a warm, professional smile. "Ah, Mr. Harrison, welcome," Julian said, offering a firm handshake. "Please, take a seat. We were just clearing space for our honored guests." Julian then turned back to Ethan, his fake smile instantly turning into a cold glare. He grabbed Ethan's shoulder roughly and shoved him backward toward the hallway. "Get out of the way. Mr. Harrison is worth millions. Your entire life's work isn't worth a fraction of his watch. Go sit by the kitchen or leave completely." Ethan reached up and removed Julian's hand from his jacket. "Do not touch me again, Julian," Ethan said, his tone low and dangerous. The sudden shift in Ethan's demeanor caught Julian off guard for a second, but Julian quickly recovered, his anger rising. He pulled out his phone and made a rapid call to the restaurant manager. "Bring your head of security to the main dining room immediately," Julian commanded into the phone. "We have an uninvited guest who is harassing my family." Ethan reached into his pocket. He took out his phone, unlocked the screen, and glanced at a fresh notification. A brief, subtle smile touched the corner of his lips. The notification was an automated security alert. Master admin authorization granted. Final corporate audit initiated. The two security guards stepped forward, their massive frames towering over Ethan. The restaurant manager held a hand out toward the entrance, his voice firm and cold. "Sir, please leave peacefully," the manager said. "We cannot allow you to disrupt our high-profile guests." Julian leaned back against his chair, taking a slow sip of his expensive wine. A broad, triumphant smile spread across his face. "You see, Ethan? You don't belong here. You never belonged in our world. You are just a parasite trying to leech off our success." Ethan's sister snickered quietly into her napkin. "Honestly, Ethan, it's embarrassing to watch you try to act important. Just go back to your little apartment and leave us alone." Ethan did not argue. He did not yell, nor did he resist as the guards grabbed his arms to escort him away. He maintained total silence, his expression unreadable and calm. As they walked him toward the main foyer, the entire dining hall watched. Whispers spread across the tables like wildfire. To everyone in the room, Ethan was nothing more than a failed family member getting thrown out into the cold rain. "Make sure he steps all the way out onto the street," Julian shouted from his table, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "We don't want trash lingering near the front door." The guards pushed open the heavy glass doors of the restaurant. Cold rain instantly splashed against Ethan's suit as he stepped onto the wet pavement outside. Just as the manager was about to slam the doors shut, a sharp screech of tires echoed down the street. 3 sleek black luxury sedans pulled up right to the curb, following a long black limousine that had arrived moments earlier. The security team surrounding the limousines immediately sprang into action, opening black umbrellas and forming a tight security corridor toward the restaurant entrance. From the lead limousine, an elderly gentleman stepped out. He wore a flawless tailored gray suit carrying a heavy leather briefcase stamped with a silver corporate seal. It was Arthur Vance, the legendary founder and supreme chairman of Vance Enterprises. Julian, who was watching from the window inside, nearly dropped his glass. His eyes widened in absolute shock. "He's here!" Julian gasped, scrambling out of his seat. "Arthur Vance is actually here in person." Julian's father stood up instantly, adjusting his tie with shaking hands. "This is our moment. If Vance signs the deal tonight, our family business will be worth tens of millions." The entire Sterling family rushed toward the front doors, eager to bow down and welcome the powerful billionaire. Meanwhile, Ethan stood quietly on the wet pavement, right beside the entrance. Julian sprinted ahead of his family, shoving the restaurant doors open to greet the billionaire. "Mr. Vance," Julian shouted, offering his hand with a desperate, flattering smile. "Welcome. It is an honor to have you here tonight." Arthur Vance stopped at the top of the steps. He looked down at Julian's outstretched hand, then slowly raised his eyes to scan the foyer. He ignored Julian completely, as if the man did not exist. Vance's gaze locked directly onto Ethan, who was standing in the rain. "Ethan," Mr. Vance said, his loud voice cutting through the sound of the falling rain. Julian's smile froze. He looked back and forth between the billionaire and his drenched brother. "Mr. Vance," Julian said quickly, laughing nervously. "Ignore him. That's just my useless brother. Security was throwing him out for disturbing guests." Arthur Vance turned his head slowly, his eyes narrowing into cold steel. "Did you just say you were throwing him out?" Vance asked with dangerous authority. A heavy silence fell over the lobby. Julian swallowed hard, feeling a sudden surge of panic. He forced a smile. "Yes, Mr. Vance," Julian explained hastily. "He works a small job and was bothering our dinner. Please step inside out of the rain." Arthur Vance did not move into the building. Instead, he walked directly past Julian and stepped out into the rain toward Ethan. The security team immediately held big black umbrellas over both of them. Before the eyes of the entire Sterling family and dozens of wealthy diners, Arthur Vance did something unthinkable. The billionaire bowed his head deeply to Ethan. "I apologize deeply for arriving late, sir," Vance said respectfully. "Traffic was severe. I hope these people did not cause you discomfort." Ethan wiped a drop of rain from his face and gave a subtle nod. "You arrived right on time, Arthur." Julian stood frozen on the steps, his mouth wide open. "Mr. Vance?" Julian stammered, running out into the rain. "Why are you talking to him like that? He's just a low-level worker." Arthur Vance turned around, his face rigid with disgust. "Low-level worker? Do you have any idea who you are talking to?" "He's my brother," Julian yelled with desperation. "He lives in a tiny apartment. He has nothing." Arthur Vance opened his leather briefcase and pulled out corporate documents with gold seals. 3 years ago, Vance began in a booming voice, Vance Enterprises was near bankruptcy. It was this man, Ethan, who single-handedly redesigned our entire global infrastructure. Julian shook his head frantically. "No, that's impossible." 6 months ago, Vance continued, "when I retired, I transferred 90% of Vance Enterprises' voting shares into his name. Ethan is the majority owner and absolute chairman of Vance Enterprises." The entire restaurant erupted into shocked gasps. Julian's knees buckled. He stumbled backward against the marble pillar, his face completely drained of color. He is the CEO?" Julian whispered, his hands trembling violently. Ethan walked up the marble steps, stepping out of the rain and back into the warm light of the restaurant foyer. Arthur Vance followed right behind him, holding the corporate folder. The Sterling family stood in utter horror. Ethan's father stepped forward, his body shaking, his previous arrogance completely destroyed. Ethan," his father stammered, trying to put on a warm smile. "Son, we didn't know. Why didn't you tell us you were the head of Vance Enterprises?" Ethan looked at his father with calm, empty eyes. "Because every time I tried to talk to you about my work over the last 5 years, you cut me off to talk about Julian's achievements. You only care about titles and money, father. You never cared about me." Ethan's mother rushed forward, reaching out to touch his wet sleeve. "Ethan, sweetie, please. It was all a misunderstanding. Julian was just stressed about the contract. We are your family." "Family?" Ethan asked quietly. 10 minutes ago, you sat there while Julian told security to throw me into the rain like garbage. Not one of you spoke up for me." Julian fell to his knees on the polished marble floor. All his arrogance was gone, replaced by pure terror. The multi-million-dollar deal with Vance Enterprises was the only thing keeping his own company from going bankrupt. He had taken massive loans, betting everything on tonight. "Ethan! Brother!" "Please," Julian begged, tears mixing with the rainwater on his face. "I was wrong. I was arrogant. Please don't ruin me. If Vance Enterprises doesn't sign this contract, my company will go bankrupt by tomorrow morning. I will lose everything." Arthur Vance stepped forward and pulled a red document from his folder. "Actually, Julian," Vance said coldly, "it is already over. The contract you were hoping to sign tonight required the personal final signature of our chairman, and our chairman is Ethan." Julian looked up at Ethan with desperate, pleading eyes. "Ethan, please sign it. For the family, I'll give you half the company. Just sign the deal." Ethan looked down at his kneeling brother. The room was completely silent. Every wealthy guest, investor, and staff member was watching the dramatic collapse of the proud Julian Sterling. Ethan took the contract from Vance's hands. He looked at it for a moment, then looked back at Julian. "You told me earlier that respect is earned through success," Ethan said calmly. "But real respect is shown in how you treat people when you think they have nothing." With a slow, deliberate movement, Ethan tore the contract directly down the middle. The sound of the paper tearing echoed like thunder through the silent room. Ethan dropped the torn pieces onto the floor in front of Julian. "Deal canceled," Ethan said softly. Julian stared at the torn pieces of paper on the floor, letting out a weak, broken sob. His entire life's work, his wealth, his status, everything had evaporated in a single second. Ethan's father grabbed his own chest, barely able to breathe. "Ethan, you just ruined your brother. You destroyed this family." "No, father," Ethan replied, looking his father dead in the eye. "Julian destroyed himself with his own greed and arrogance, and you enabled him every step of the way." Ethan turned to the restaurant manager, who was standing in the corner, trembling with fear. "Manager," Ethan said calmly. "Yes, sir," the manager squeaked out, bowing repeatedly. "Anything you need, Mr. Sterling?" The small table near the kitchen. Ethan pointed toward the back room. "Give it to my family. They can sit there and think about how they treat people, and send their bill directly to Julian." Without waiting for a response, Ethan turned his back on his family. "Ethan! Wait! Please!" his mother cried out, but the security guard stepped in, blocking the family from following him. Ethan walked out of the restaurant side by side with Arthur Vance. The security team opened the door of the long black limousine. As Ethan sat in the soft leather seat of the luxury car, he looked out the window one last time. He saw his family standing inside the restaurant glass, humiliated, ruined, and weeping in front of the entire city's elite. Arthur Vance closed his briefcase and looked at Ethan with a smile. "Where to now, Chairman?" Ethan leaned back against the headrest and let out a deep, peaceful breath. For the first time in his life, the heavy weight of his family's judgment was completely gone. He felt free. "To the main office, Arthur," Ethan said smoothly as the limousine pulled away into the night. "We have real work to do."